Is an Israel-Hamas temporary ceasefire on the cards? Are they nearing a deal to release hostages in exchange for a pause in fighting in Gaza? And if so, what does a temporary ceasefire even look like? We ask these questions because a couple of rather interesting developments have happened over the weekend. Let's break them down for you, beginning with what happened on Saturday. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggesting that a temporary ceasefire could be considered in Gaza, contingent on the return of hostages. Listen in first to this statement.
Many in the world demanded that we not enter the Gaza Strip. We entered. They pressed that we did not enter Gaza City. We entered. They warned us not to enter Shifa, even though Shifa served as a major terror base for Hamas. They pressured us to agree to a full ceasefire. We refused, and I conveyed we will only agree to a temporary ceasefire and only in exchange for the return of our hostages.
Now, this marks a significant turnaround for Israel. It has gone from vehemently opposing ceasefire calls to now entertaining the possibility. It could be credited to pressure from its closest ally, the US. However, this raises another pressing question. What would this temporary ceasefire look like? And answering this question becomes particularly crucial given the ongoing daily bombardment in the Gaza Strip. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Reports emerged on Sunday claiming that Hamas, Israel and the US have been able to successfully broker a ceasefire deal. It would include a 5-day pause in the fighting to release 50 or more hostages. But the report was vehemently refuted by both Israel and the US. Dismissing the reports of Israel and Hamas agreeing to a temporary ceasefire deal, a White House spokesperson in fact said, and I'm quoting, "No deal yet, but we continue to work hard to get a deal." On Monday, more questions surfaced. Even though both the US and Israel refuted claims of a deal being reached, the Qatari Prime Minister said that Israel and Hamas were close to reaching a hostage release deal. He said that mediation efforts have made good progress in the past few days. The Qatari Prime Minister said this during a joint press conference with European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell.
The deal is going through ups and downs from time to time throughout the last few weeks, but I think that, I'm now more confident that we are close enough to reach to a deal that can bring the people safely back to their homes, whether they are the hostages on Hamas side or whatever the exchange that will happen will take place from the Israeli side.
The Qatari Prime Minister said only minor differences between Hamas and Israel remained to be resolved, and the challenges facing the deal were just practical and logistical. Qatar and some other countries have been making efforts to mediate between the two sides to secure the release of the hostages being held captive by Hamas. And these regional players are taking efforts to de-escalate the situation and ensure that it does not spiral into a wider war. Last week, the armed wing of Hamas, or the Al-Qassam brigades, said that they were ready to release up to 70 women and children in exchange for a 5-day truce. Additionally, they also demanded the release of more than 200 Palestinian women and children detained by the Israeli side. While Qatari mediators made progress towards a hostage deal, Israeli troops expanded their operation in Gaza. The IDF issued warnings for residents in Jabalia, Gaza's largest refugee camp, and the nearby coastal camp to evacuate. As intense bombardment of Jabalia started, the aftermath, with smoke rising from buildings, was visible on Sunday. According to a Hamas health official, over 80 people lost their lives in Israel's twin strikes on Jabalia. The Saturday bombing also targeted a UN school, sheltering displaced people. Following Al-Shifa Hospital, Jabalia has become a new flashpoint in the conflict, where the Israeli forces are actively pursuing Hamas operatives. The UN rights chief has strongly condemned the strike on the school as horrifying. In his words, the horrendous events of the past 48 hours in Gaza beggar belief. However, this condemnation has not halted the shelling. On Monday, the Palestinian news agency reported that the Indonesian hospital near Jabalia had also come under shelling. Now, let's just take a step back and rewind here. Remember why and when this war started. Israel launched that offensive against Hamas after a wave of brutal cross-border raids on the 7th of October. But 6 weeks into the war, the death toll from Israel's retaliatory strikes has reached over 13, in fact impacted over 13,000 people. Thousands of them are children. Just let that sink in. It's a humanitarian crisis like no other, and Israel is facing intense international pressure to justify its bloody toll. There are concerns that the quote-unquote window of legitimacy for the war to rout Hamas may be closing. Under intense scrutiny, and rightfully so, Israel has presented what it said is evidence against Hamas, one piece of footage revealing a huge tunnel of terror, quote-unquote, purportedly built by Hamas under Gaza's biggest hospital, Al-Shifa. Israel called it more proof of how Hamas uses the patients as human shields. The tunnel, which reportedly drops below 30 feet underground, has been described as an operational tunnel shaft by the Israeli forces. The Israeli military released another video, a CCTV footage reportedly from the 7th of October, showing 2 male hostages from Nepal and Thailand being brought into the hospital. The Israeli army said that they have not yet located both of these hostages. In another clip, an injured man can be seen being wheeled in by armed men as several others wearing blue hospital scrubs look on. At least 240 people, including infants, teens and senior citizens, are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. The fate of these hostages remains unknown, causing distress not only to their families but also to the Israeli public at large. And as the war claims more lives in the Gaza Strip and puts more in jeopardy, Netanyahu will face numerous questions. Indeed, Israel's window of legitimacy is closing. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.